Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland, and today we have another review for you. Today we're going to be reviewing this beautiful set of pedals from HPP Simulations. Mark Haggard over at HPP was nice enough to send me this evaluation copy of his latest edition of this set of pedals. Now there's a couple of changes in this pedal set versus the other pedal sets that he's been selling, and we're going to go over those changes in detail. And as most of you probably know, this brake pedal on this set is based on Mark's own proprietary hydraulic design and solution, and we'll be going over that in detail also. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so now we've got the pedal sets up close so we can take a closer look at it. First of all, just an overall view of the pedal. As you can see in these lights that I have when I shoot the videos, this is just one sparkly, beautiful piece of machining kit. I really like the way these look. The fit and the finish are top notch, top flight. I don't think you can do any better as far as the fit and finish on this thing. It's just gorgeous. And I love machining and CNC work on forged steel, aluminum. I just love to see that stuff in action, and I love to see the results of it done properly. And that's what this is. You can see how this whole pedal system is set up. You got your pads up here on the levers, like most pedals, of course. And you have four main feet here to support the whole system as far as perpendicular this way. Then you've got a heavy steel bar that runs through all four of them, and you have the levers on the pedals actually attached on the bar and it's held in place by these steel sleeves that have set screws in them, and we'll look a little bit closer at that later when we're looking at the adjustments on the pedals. And on the back, for the structure support, you have this huge almost 3-inch bar, it looks like here, or piece of 1/2-inch steel that runs all the way across and connects everything together, along with the supporting steel bar up here. Very, very stout. You can grab these and push on them and squeeze them, try to spread them apart, and there's just no flex whatsoever. What little bit of flex that you will find is inherent into the connectors he's using here that have these little swivel bearing units in it, like in real race cars, and there is a little bit of lateral movement there, but that's just inherent with the design there. And you don't want it to be binding up either, so you do want a little bit of play in there. All right, as you can see on the back here, this is where the main thing that sticks out to you is Mark's proprietary hydraulic pedal design, which consists of a beautiful little machined master cylinder here that's directly connected to the slave cylinder over here. And of course you have the bumpers that most hydraulic systems will have on them to give you the resistance when you press on the pedal. And as you can see, it's a very nicely done, beautiful piece. When he first came out with this unit, he had a big reservoir sitting on the top here. Now the reservoir is gone. This nice machined metal plate is in its place, and it's a sealed system now. I imagine there's a rubber O-ring in there. And we might take that apart and take a look at it, but we'll get to that when we get to the adjustments. And also on the back, you can see it has very nice aluminum pieces here. The levers themselves, very, very nicely done. Even left in, which I really like, is he left the machining marks from the bits that actually machine these out of the solid piece of aluminum, which is very cool, very race car-like, instead of polishing all that out, which I'm sure it would have looked nice too, but I prefer it to have some machining left in it like that. It really looks cool. And the pads themselves, you can see, are solid aluminum pieces, and they have screws on the back, screw holes rather, that are threaded. All these are threaded. You got 3 across, 4 sets down, so we can have a lot of adjustability in the pedal. You got the 2 screws that will show how we adjust the pedal pads on them when we get there. It's just so well done when you hold this. Now, you may have seen pictures of this pedal set on the internet, like I did, and maybe even a video of somebody using one. But boy, when you get these things in your hand, you just realize how nicely done these are. These got little housings here. All this custom machined in shop or in-house at HPP Simulations by Mark. And you can see that has, we'll get to a little more detail on this later, but it has for the potentiometers these ribbon potentiometers or resistors. And it's a very cool design. I've never seen anything like this up close, and it really looks functional and like something that's not going to wear out, but we'll see later on. Now, you have it over here on the clutch also. The brake, of course, you don't have one because it's running off the pressure sensor, which is, again, is something that Mark has somebody make for him in his own proprietary design. On the bottom, in the back, of course, you can see the nice milled pieces there. on the back of the throttle and clutch. And on the bottom here, talking about going beyond the Call of Duty, this is a nice, pretty machined aluminum box that houses the USB circuit board. Now, of course, instead of just putting some piece of plastic on there, you can see these actually machined all that out. And it's not just machined, even the edges, there's no burrs there. That's a beveled edge around there where the USB plug goes. Again, it's just really well thought out and nicely executed. I really like this set of pedals as far as the design of it and the execution of that design. And over here on the clutch, you can see how that has a cam, piece of aluminum that actually is a cam that works against these springs on these arms here, and there's two bearings in here. But we'll get to the details of that when we get to the adjustments and start doing close-ups of the pedals so you guys can see that clearer. All right. Again, you can see just a very nice looking set of pedals. Now there are some extras that come with it. Of course, the first thing that we can look at is these rubber bumpers. And these are the red ones, which are the soft durometer. We also get a couple of these, which are black, which are hard durometer ratings. And we'll put the durometer meter on these and see what they are when we get to the adjustment part. And you can actually mix and match these if you want to give you more of a progressive feel, like say one red one on the back and a black one on the front. And we'll give you that more of a progressive GT pedal feel instead of the two red ones. Or you can just put the two black ones on there, maybe get you a nice stiff F1-like pedal feel. But we'll get to that again when we get to the adjustments. Also, he sent the optional pieces. There's a couple of them here. And this is the optional heel rest plate, which I would recommend that you get if you don't have something already that you can rest your heel on. It's just one of those things that when you don't have it, you can get by, but when you have one, you wonder how you did get by. And it's got these very cool machined aluminum arms here. Again, everything is just really, really nicely done. And how this sits is, you go with your way, I imagine. But I imagine that really what it was designed to be mounted here. But you could mount it there if you want it lower, I suppose. And go even lower with it if you have clearance underneath it. But I'm going to mount them like this at first. And then, of course, you can see that slot here goes onto the end right there. And, of course, we got two screw holes in here that we can mount this. And that slot allows an elevation change, so we can go up or down. And of course the long slot allows the tray itself to move in and out to your own specifications and requirements. We also get a hardware pack so we can mount everything. And we get a USB cable. And I also got this optional wide brake pedal, or wide any pedal. Doesn't necessarily have to be your brake pedal, I guess, but that's where I'm going to use it. I really like a wider brake pedal if I can get it, because in the heat of battle, sometimes with a thinner pedal, your foot can slip off, and with a thicker one, it doesn't do it as easily. Or it's just nice to have more purchase against your foot if that's what you want, and you're running a bigger shoe even. These pads here are also, like these, solid aluminum, and got threads tapped in them. And of course, you see the 3 across and 4 down, just like these have. They're very nice pieces to hold in your hand, and it's something that, again, it really shines on this pedal set when you pick them up. And when you pick up this individual hunk of forged aluminum, it really feels nice in your hand. Like I said, I really like this kind of stuff. And we're going to put that on the brake pedal because we can. All right. Now, anything else I want to go over? Let's see, I saw the bottom. We did a good look around. It's just a shiny, sparkly set of pedals that's just got impeccable finish on it. But right now what we need to do is go ahead and get into how to set up the pedals, different settings available, and different features. And this one actually has a feature that is new where we can actually change the angle of these pedals. As you can see right now, they're pretty straight up and down, which I like them that way. But we can actually take this whole bar assembly here, and undo these screws, and they will actually have other holes here. You can barely see them there. And we can slide this whole assembly back so we can change the angle of the pedals back to the slanted ones. So now, instead of having 2 sets of pedals available, one slanted and one straight up and down, we can have 1 set of pedals and have the adjustment in that 1 set of pedals. All right, but we'll talk a little bit more about that once we get into detailed settings, and you know how we usually do it here on the Sim Racing Garage. We go into a lot of details, so this is going to be a long video, but I am going to cut it up in segments to try to make it easier on you guys to view it. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the actual setup and settings of the pedals. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to the adjustments available on these pedals. First, we'll do the pedal pads, and as we saw before, there's 3 columns of 4 rows here of tapped or threaded holes, so we can really move these pads around in a lot of different orientations. They were very generous when they made these pads to have that many adjustments on them. So what I'm going to do is use my trusty little DeWalt drill, and I'm using a 3/16 hex bit for this belt over here. So these are all 3/16. In fact, there's some other bolts and bits on here that are 3/16 also, mainly the ones holding the brake on, but we'll get to that eventually. So what we want to do first is just loosen them up, and always take the bottom completely loose first, because I don't want the top one to come out first and this would fall over and flop around, maybe hit something. So simple enough. And again, another nice piece of billet aluminum, really nicely CNC machined. You can see that there. You can even see the tooling marks that are still on it, which personally I really like. So we'll go ahead and put the fatty or the wide on there, and you can see the tooling marks in that too. Again, I just really like that. It's very race car like. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and put this in temporarily. I'm going to put it right where the other one was as far as height. And as you can see, I have the clutch engaged for this, so I don't over tighten it or over torque it. Alright, so there you go. Simple as that. But what I'm going to do now is, while we're on the pedal pad adjustments, is I'm going to make these pedals set up for a heel and toe type of pedal action, which means I'm going to move the wide pedal over towards the throttle pedal and the throttle pedal over towards the wide pedal. And I'm going to move the clutch pedal over, because this is coming over this way. I don't want to have too much of a reach over here for my clutch pedal when I'm doing my heel and toe like this. So it's kind of a little bit of a reach right now. So let's see how far we can get these guys together and what it looks like, and if it's going to be able to be set up for that kind of action. So what we'll do is we'll cut here, and I'll go ahead and make the changes, and when we come back, it'll all be changed and we'll take a look at it. Alright, now we made the adjustments, and as you can see, I've got, it's easier to see what I've done from the rear here. So I've moved the throttle pedal over this way towards the brake, and the brake over towards the throttle. So now I've got a much closer pedal orientation. Look at it this way. So now I can get in here and heel and toe this accelerator much better, because now it's much closer. And as you can see, I've also moved in the clutch pedal as far as I could get it over, so I don't have to have extreme reach for the clutch pedal. So that is definitely a feasible way to go. And of course, I could also take this brake pedal and push it way over here if I want to, and take the throttle and push it over here, so that I have more space if I'm doing the left foot braking. And that really helps me anyway when I'm doing a long race, like an endurance race. It's much more comfortable to have my legs coming at more of an open angle than trying to come in real tight and brake and use throttle at the same time with your feet that close. It's easier on the knees and the legs in general when you have it further apart. At least for me it is. Right, so now what we'll do is we'll get to the next portion of the adjustment of the pedals, and what we'll do is do throttle, brake, and then clutch, and show the different adjustments available there. Okay, just before I get to the throttle settings or adjustments, just want to show you that I adjusted the pads here out as far as they would go from each other, and that gives us that left foot braking configuration. And it looks like we got some pretty good room going on here. It looks like it'll be really comfortable once we get it set up the way we want it to be. Now, some of the adjustments on this throttle are exactly the same on the clutch, so we probably won't go too much into the clutch, but we'll do each one individually to show you how they operate. Now, before I get into the adjustment of this pedal, I want to show you guys, just want to do a quick close-up of the membrane potentiometers that Mark uses on these. And these things, again, are like something like 10 million times before they'll wear out. See if I can get this. I'm going to have to pan up a little bit, so bear with me of the camera shake so you guys can get a good look at this. So as you can see, it is a membrane. It's just a very thin membrane mounted to this aluminum block here, and then the wire for that goes down inside here and goes into the USB board that is mounted directly beneath it. Now, the way this works is when the throttle moves, let's move the throttle, there is a nylon tip on a set screw in here, and I'll try to get the up there where you can see it. You're gonna have to pan up again a little bit. So again, bear with me if there's camera jiggle. There we go. That's what we want to see. So there's a little set screw in here, right there. And inside that set screw, there's another little screw that's got a spring in it that keeps tension on the nylon tip. Let's see if I can get you to see that nylon tip in there. There it is. So you can see it right in there. And that's what rides against that potentiometer. Very cool setup, and I really like the way this works. I've never seen one up close before, so I thought I'd go ahead and show you guys what it looks like and the way he has set it up here. Alright, so now let's take a closer look at the adjustments available in the pedal. First we'll go to the lever adjustments as far as the angle. Let me get back out on my wide angle here. And we'll pan down. So this is where the adjustment's going to occur. And one of the cool things about this pedal set is it has these cool clevis pins in here that you'll find on race cars all the time, and also connecting our end rods in here also. It's just like a race car would be set up. And what you do is you just pop this little spring-loaded clip on the back of this clevis pin, and you pop that up. And once it's up, it's disengaged from the back of this collar here, and the pin will come out. So you just slide the pin out, and you can see that's what it looks like. The pedal can fall forward. That's what the pin looks like. There's a little clip here. And now we have this free to do all the adjusting we want to on it. And these are 1/2-inch nuts on the back here on the connecting rod, and the threaded rod up here where this connector actually connects to the lever. Both of these act as a locking nut. If I wanted to adjust this, there's actually 2 ways I can do this, which gives us a lot of leeway as far as the angle of the pedal. I can actually come back here on the rod end part and just loosen that nut right there. That's a 1/2-inch nut. Once it's loose, I can spin it up, and now I can actually spin this thing down into the rod itself. To a certain extent, it will bottom out. In fact, that's where it's bottoming out right there. So I would back that out a turn or two maybe to make sure that it's not sitting on the bottom here. And then go ahead and put my lock nut back down, take my 1/2-inch and tighten that back up just to snug it up. Now what you want to be mindful of here is when you're tightening this stuff up, especially when you get this connection back on your lever, is you don't have this thing connected in a binding position. This little piece here needs to be in the center. See how it can go either way? So you want to make sure that's in the center when you get everything tight. You don't want it bound up against the side of this block or that side of the block. Just something to be mindful of when you're making adjustments. Right. So the second way to adjust this thing is to come in with a 1/2-inch wrench again, and we're going to take the lock nut off of this piece. And once we get that loose, we can spin it down just like we did the other one. And now, because there is actually a hole inside of here, see that? We can actually spin this in or out on the same rod. So if I want to go extreme here and turn this all the way down to there, and I tighten that all back up, then I take my lever and put it in, you can see how much further back that's gone. So it's nice to have independent lever position adjustments, even though we do have a lever adjustment for the whole set, and we'll get to that once we're done with each pedal. I wouldn't have it back that far, so I would just normal everything back up, and that's about right about there, I think. Run my lock nut back up, and when I'm running this lock nut back up, I'm paying attention to the orientation of this inside the block so it's not bound up when I tighten it up. And then I come back in with my 1/2-inch and just tighten it back up, just snug it. And you can see actually it actually turned on me a little bit there. So I want to make sure it doesn't do that when I'm tightening. And to do that, I will need another 1/2-inch wrench to hold this guy. So once I'm holding this one, then I can make sure that as I tighten this, this doesn't change. Alright, so now I'm straight and straight. It's a matter of put my lever back up. Actually, you know what? I want to pull this back out because remember we went inside the clevis, or not the clevis, but in the connecting rod. I want to pull that back out. Trying to normal that back up. So we'll spin our lock nut back down there. Get everything normal back up. Bring my lever back up. Grab that cool clevis pin. Insert it back in. Once we get her lined up, rotate it back down on that collar, and it snaps into place. Good to go. Now that this is steady and it's where I want it to be, then I would go in with my 1/2" wrenches and go ahead and tighten things up again, making sure that I want to tighten up so that connecting rod is straight up and down, just like that. Again, just something to be mindful of when you're making these adjustments. There's also a stop adjustment on the throttle, along with the clutch also. So I can adjust how far back that lever goes. And that's a simple adjustment right there, but it's a different size, of course, wrench. And this is a 7/16. So I would loosen that up. And once I loosen that up, this can be screwed further in or taken back out, depending on what I want it to be. Snug it back up. And my pedal travel is now set the way I want it. Simple enough. All right. Now what we'll do is we'll go over to the clutch and see how that works and how that adjusts on the next segment. Right, so now we'll look at the clutch pedal. And you can see it's very similar to what we saw on the throttle. It has the membrane potentiometer and it has the linkage that we saw there. Now we're going to have to take all this apart because it's exactly the way the throttle works, and the stop also controls the travel of the clutch pedal. And the clutch pedal has a nice feel to it. When you first put it, it's like when you first put your pressure on it, it's hard. Just like if you ever driven a standard transmission, and most of you probably have, when you first push the pedal down and you're putting pressure on the springs in the pressure plate of a clutch assembly, you can feel that pressure building, and then all of a sudden it goes through and it's easy to hold it. And then when you let it out, the spring tension gets harder again as you let the clutch back out. This simulates it very, very well. I really like this. Now, there's other pedals like the HE that have a simulation of the same forces, and it does a great job also. But it's neat the way that Mark has gone down his own road here again and designed his own way of doing it. And we'll take a closer look at that now. Let's flip this up for you. Now, what you'll see here is there's two sets of arms right here. Set here, set here. And there's actually a spring here on the back set of arms. And there's actually a spring, I'll show you what the spring looks like, that goes on the front set. But I took this one off because it makes it easier for me to show you and to move the pedal and show you the movement of that cam going in between those two arms. Now that setup consists of the cam, as I said before. This is just a solid billet piece of aluminum, and it's shaped like a cam, or it's shaped so it will act as a cam against these bearings. And you'll see right here, he's got roller bearings in here on this side and this side. Very cool. And when we move that pedal, because it's fatter back here, it's going to force these arms apart, riding against those roller bearings. And that's what gives us that, it's hard at first, and then bam, now it's easy to hold it there. And then when you let it off, it comes down that slope of that cam, and whoosh, it feels like the clutch pressure plate spring pushing back against you and giving you resistance when you push it up. And again, I'm going to put the spring back on here before I mount them, because with my foot and leg, I'll be able to press this without any problem. But I did take this off because it's real hard to do that with both of those springs with just your hand. That is a very cool solution there. I really like that design. When I first saw pictures of it, I really liked it then too. I said, you know, that is cool. It's great that, you know, the Mark thinks a little bit outside of the box and comes up with his own designs and is able to take those designs and actually make them a reality to where we can use them. I really like that setup there. And of course the cable is just more electronics from his membrane potentiometer going over to the USB box over here, which again, a beautiful CNC machined unit. Even the like I said before, I showed you before, even this hole here's got bevels in it. For crying out loud, man, that's really nice. All right, so simple enough for the clutch and the accelerator pedal. And when we come back on the next segment, we're going to take a close look at the brake pedal assembly. All right, so now let's look at this hydraulic pressure system he's designed here. This is his own proprietary design, and when he first came out with this, you guys will probably remember, and some of you may even still have them. He came out with a reservoir, and a lot of the models were sold with the reservoir sitting on top, like a lot of hydraulic simulator pedals out there that had a reservoir system either mounted directly to the master cylinder, or maybe even remotely mounted somewhere else with the tube running to it. Now he's taken that away and made his own design to where you can actually invert the pedals and move them around and don't ever worry about getting the air into the system, because there's no reservoir with a bunch of fluid sloshing around in it. They can go one way or the other and suck air into the system. Now, when I first got this, I said, man, that is cool. That's the first time I've actually seen a seal system like that. And the first thing I did was get out my 3/32 hex and open it up. Just want to see what's in this. And that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to go ahead and take these screws out and show you real quick what it looks like, because it's very cool. And help me here get this out. There we go. And we get the little cap off. And look at that. There's no fluid in there. Where's all the fluid? Well, let me get a little closer here. Bear with me as I run this thing up a little bit. All right, there we go. And you can see, again, very nicely machined stuff in here. It's very pretty. I love this stuff. And there's a little, looks like a little bleeder hole in there, bleed hole in there to keep things equalized. You got your O-ring over here to seal everything up. And at the shop, when Mark bleeds these out, once he's got it bled out using this valve over here, he sucks any of the, or takes out any of the brake fluid that's still in that little reservoir part there, and that means it's all stuck inside of here, or not really stuck, but it's all inside of here and over here in the slave cylinder. And you can tilt this either way you want, and I don't ever see any brake fluid coming out of it, so that's why you can mount these invertly mount these pedals with no problems. I had to do that, and I just like to look inside of things and see what's going on in there, and I thought you guys might like to do that too. I wouldn't recommend that you do this kind of thing to your set. I have a lot of experience with pedal systems and brake systems and been bleeding brakes for most of my life, so I wasn't really worried if I got some air into the system by messing around with it. I would just bleed it out, or call Mark and make sure I was bleeding out any air that got into the system properly so it would work again. Anyway, let's go ahead and put the screws back in, and we'll cross torque them. Doesn't take much, but again, I probably wouldn't do this if I was you at home. There's really no need to. I just wanted to show you what was inside of there, and we'll go ahead and pan back out. And how this works, of course, is the brake pedal pushes in on the master cylinder, which causes pressure to push on the fluid in the master cylinder over to the slave cylinder. And the slave cylinder has another piston inside with seals that pushes, and the hydraulic fluid pushes that up, which brings this threaded rod that's attached to the other end up and squeezes our urethane bumpers and gives us a feeling of resistance in the brake pedals. Very simple, really, the way this stuff works. Not so simple to actually implement it and make it work in a sim racing pedal setup. That takes a lot of trial and error to develop these systems. And of course, again, Mark's own proprietary, not design, but proprietary specifications on the pressure sensor on this set. Remember when some of these sets first came out, and other sets, not just Mark's, some people were having problems with the eBay sensors, pressure sensors you get on eBay rather, not lasting very long and blowing out. Not going to have a problem here. This is all stainless steel housing up here, very nice. I don't see anything ever blowing out of this, and it's like 10 million cycles rated at, the people who make this for him. So high quality stuff. These sensors can run as high as $200-300 alone just for a sensor when it comes to the high quality stuff. Right, so now let's just take a quick look here. Now this is the way the bumpers are mounted is typical of the slave cylinder setups you'll see in hydraulic systems. He has just one nut back here, and it acts as two things. It keeps the urethane bumpers on there, and it also acts as a pre-adjustment, or what we call preload. So you can actually screw this in, and actually Mark recommends about 3 to 4 on the 2 soft bumpers to start out with, and that's what I'm going to start out with. I'm going to start out with 2 soft bumpers, even though I've got it set up with the black one here. I'll have this one back in, and then I'll move to the black ones, and a black and a soft one like you see here. And the black one is the harder one, and the red one being softer gives me, when I push the pedal, a progressive feel. So what I mean by that is this guy, the soft one, will compress first before this black one starts to compress. So I've got travel, and then it starts getting harder and harder as you're pushing it down, which gives you a better feel, at least to me, of where my braking threshold is before I'm going to lock the brakes up in the car. I really like to run it like this, but I am going to run it with just the softs just to see how it works, because I might be wrong. This one might actually feel better to me. I don't know yet until I have them mounted. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get it set up so I can do the softs. Remember, the washers always go in between the bumpers. Now, before I put that soft one up, I like to do this, and I'll go ahead and do this real quick here. I like to see what the durometer is, or the rating on these. And I use this little meter. You guys have probably seen this before in some other videos, and it's just a tire hardness tester, and it just measures the hardness of rubber. Simple enough. And this one is a long acre. And there's several ones out there. I like this because it's metal. I just like the steel parts. And it is a Sure A rated durometer, which means it goes to 0 to 100 instead of like 0 to 200. And 0 to 100 just gives me a little bit more accuracy, as long as I don't need to measure anything that's over 100 in hardness, which I usually don't with these kind of bumpers. So I'm going to go ahead and see what this one's rated at. And I'll push that down and hold it nice and steady. And it looks like I'm around 67 there. So I got 67 for the soft one. And I'll go over here to the hard one and get that one squared up. And that one's actually at 83. So 67 and 83. Now I like to use these because I can actually tell when my bumpers are getting degraded. Or if I want to experiment with other bumpers, I can use this and get a general idea of what I'm going to feel or where it's going to be based on what this is telling me. I'm actually going to do the other black one too, because it's already off. And it's at 84. So that's just a little bit of difference there. Let me do this one again. Yeah, this one's 84 too. So now when I'm doing them together right next to each other, I'm getting the same durometer ratings, pretty much. So that means that these are pretty good quality as far as the durometers themselves. And let's do the soft ones the same way. I got 767 on that. And sometimes this thing won't read exactly the same every time. Like that looks like 68. If you move it around, it'll give you different readings. But we're about 67, so let's see what this one does. And 67 too. So again, very close tolerances actually on these bumpers. So Mark is using a good quality urethane bumper here, no doubt. So we'll go ahead and set it back up for the soft. And we'll put our nut back on. Alright. And this nut is actually a 9/16. So you need a 9/16 to set up the preload. So preload, I would set this up, loosen it up until it just makes contact but doesn't really push the bumpers in. And then I would go in and do my turns. There's a half a turn. That's 1 turn. 2 turns. And I'm going to go 3 turns. That's where I'm going to start out at. You can see, I don't know if you can really see that in the video, but it does bulge the bumpers out just a little bit by putting that much preload on them. So that's how I'm going to set these up in my rig. And is there anything else I want to do? There's one more thing, of course, big thing I want to do to show you guys how that works. Is this plate here, as you can see, has 8 total bolts or screws holding this plate to the assembly of these arms, of these legs down here, these 4 legs. I got 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, easy to see, but I've also got 2 over here under the pressure sensor. And I can't really get to those. unless I pull this assembly off. So if I'm going to change the major angle of these pedals all at once, all 3 pedals, by moving this whole plate back, which is a very cool feature, by the way. I really like that. I'm going to have to loosen this up and take this loose to where I can get to those nuts. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and move these pedals back into more of a GT angle by moving this whole plate back 1 hole back here. And you can actually see the hole. See if I can get you to see it there. It's right behind the plate. Little hole there. And you can see it up here on this one, barely. So that's what we're going to be moving this plate back to. But I am going to have to take this apart, or not apart, but just loose. And you can see right there, it's simple enough. It's just 4 more bolts. And of course, these bolts are also the 3/16 size. And I'll be using this wrench for that. And you can see that wrench is a 3/16. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. We'll cut, and when we come back, I'll have the master cylinder assembly and slave assembly loose to where I can get to the screws and show you how that works. So we've got the 4 bolts loose, and I've also loosened most of the bolts. Go ahead and turn this over so you can see it. Just make sure, just keep your hand on that to make sure it doesn't really get away. But you can see this is all one assembly, and it lifts up easy enough to where you can get to, and there they are, the screws in question. So let's go ahead and do that. I can actually tilt this whole assembly forward and take my hand off of it. So it's very cool the way it was designed, so it really is not that big of a deal to do this. Take this one out, and we'll take the last one out. Now, I can take this plate here, the whole plate, and slide it backwards until I line up the holes back here, and I'm looking straight down on them so I can see when they're going to line up. And that looks like it's about it right there. And of course, the first screws I want to put back are the ones that are under the sensor. And I'll just jiggle the plate a little bit while I'm screwing them down. Once I get them started, I'm good to go. Now, what I am going to do before I tighten those up, and you should always do, of course, if you have a lot of different screws to put in, is go ahead and put all these screws back in and get them all started, because I don't want to tighten one side up and then all of a sudden I can't get the rest of them in because it's locked into position. So I'll just get everything started. So we know those are started. Get these guys going, and these guys over here. And once they're all going, then I can go ahead and torque it up. And I'll just torque this side, then I'll go over to this side and kind of work my way inside. That's just the way I usually do things. I'm from old school, learning how to cross torque everything. We'll go over to these guys and torque them down. 2 more and we're done. So now all I've got to do is I'm going to tilt this back up, the whole assembly, and again holding this, supporting it so nothing happens to it. I can just tilt that right back on top there. Now tilt everything up, again kind of holding on to it. Not that big of a deal really, until I get it lined up to where I can get these screws started again. And I'll keep this cable out of the way, of course. So let's go ahead and tilt it this way a little bit. Okay, once you get one started, then you're good to go. And all I got to do is put the rest of them in, tighten them back down, and we'll see what angle we have when we come back. Okay, we got everything set back up. Our bolts are back in. Now we can turn it back up and take a look at our angle. And you can see our angle is really laid back now. And that's, of course, you can see my throttle pedal is actually a little bit forward of everything else, but that's easily adjustable right here. And actually, if I look at my clutch over here, I can see that there's a lot less thread available or exposed here than there is here. So I would just pull this back, or maybe I wouldn't pull it back, depending on what I felt like I wanted it to be. If I wanted to, maybe I want the throttle pedal up that high. But the beauty of all this is I can actually independently adjust this guy and this guy. Now, there is a little bit of adjustment in this because remember, this assembly here, or rather this connector here, has threads in it that's threaded to this bar, and you can actually turn that in or out to adjust the brake pedal independently also. So I guess that's about it as far as adjustments on it. Everything is all secured back up. And what I'm going to do actually is and now that I showed you how to do that, I'm actually going to put them back forward again, because I like mine straight up and down because of how my body is situated in my simulator. If I had a seat that was really high and I couldn't lower it any lower to get to my pedals, or lower in relative to the plane of my pedals, then I would use this, because it's much more comfortable to have it laid back like this and to use them. Mark sent me the heel rest option that comes with these pedals, or is available with these pedals. And we're going to go ahead and mount that and see how it mounts up. It's really pretty simple, but I thought maybe you guys would like to see that. Comes with the really nice brackets that we saw before, and it's a very simple matter of just bolting everything up. And of course we have our bolt assortment over here, and really nice stuff. It looks like all nice stainless steel hardware. Again, top flight stuff. It just goes with the pedals. No reason to cheapen up with aluminum screws or something like that when he's already got such a great set of pedals and the quality is so good already. And it's a simple matter of taking these and you mount them like this, so that it's orientated where the bar actually rises as it goes away from the pedal brackets, or that we're mounting them to. And it's just a simple setup where we're just putting 2 screws in on each side, and of course we're going to put some washers and nuts on the other sides of them. And you can kind of just get in here with your fingers next to the pedal here. And what I usually do is just kind of hold the nut there, get it started, and then I'll come in with my 3/16 hex, which again, it's nice to have a bunch of hardware on here where everything's kind of universal as far as the fit. And we'll go ahead and put the washer and nut on this one. And let's get her started and just get it snugged up a bit. And these nuts themselves are 1/2 inch. So I will use a 1/2 inch wrench to tighten these up, but I'm not going to tighten them up just yet. I still want them to be able to move around a little bit. In fact, I might even have a little tighter than I want them to be right now, because I want some adjustment here as I'm mounting the actual plate itself. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get the other side mounted. Again, easy enough. Screws in the brackets up against the base. Washers and nuts. This really doesn't take too long, so I guess I'll go ahead and let the video run. Hope you guys don't mind. Get too bored watching this. Get my nuts started, everything will be great. There it goes. Get this one started. Seems a little easier if I turn it this way. And get it started. Alright, so we got them all started now. And what I'll do is bring in the plate. And it's going to be orientated like this, so we got the slope going down. And it'll fit on the outside here. And we've got some smaller screws here to go in, or bolts, whatever you want to call them, but they're also 3/16. Again, nice having a nice little touch. The thing that a lot of people don't think of, how nice it is to have a common size all the way around this set, or at least 2 sizes that are common, so you don't have to keep changing wrenches for every time you go to do something. Now this will be a little trickier because I need to get underneath here. I'll go ahead and put the other side in too. Push it back so it stays up a little. And of course we're just going to put a washer on and a nut on both sides of these too. So I can actually pick this up enough to get my fingers in there. That's enough to get it started. And we'll do the same thing on the other side with our washer nut. Now these screws with these washers on them don't go very far as into the bracket here. Just far enough, which is nice because you don't want a bunch of thread hanging out inside underneath here. Only as much as you need. And if I can get that nut on there. There it goes. Alright. So now we've got everything loosely attached. And now it's time to try to make up our minds what we want to do as far as what kind of angle do I want on this. The angle goes up and down like this, and I can tighten up wherever I want it to. And because the angle is changing up and down, you can see how it'll tilt that plate, which really, what are you going to do if it tilts up and you don't want it tilted up? Well, that's the neat feature having these here, because now I can just rotate those independent. So I can get whatever side, whatever angle I want, and then I can rotate the plate down to where it's comfortable for me. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and show you the results while it's on the bench, even though I will have to take this assembly back off because of the way the nuts, or rather the bolts, are oriented to get this attached to my rig mounting plate. But you guys don't need to see that. But I will show you how this is set up once it's all done. So now we have the pedals actually mounted to my 80/20 profile bracket that I use to mount to other 80/20 profile in my sim experience rig that you may have seen on other videos. But I just wanted to show you this again real quick so you can see what's going on here. I can actually move these laterally now, which makes up for some of the shortcomings of these pedals not being individually able to move laterally. Even though they're still being moved as one unit, I can really micro set this up and really micro adjust to where I want it to be as far as what's comfortable for my feet. And if I don't have enough adjustability in the actual 80/20 profile, once I get it tightened down, and of course I would tighten down the front and the back, not just the back, but this is for the video purposes, we can actually loosen the screws holding the actual pedal set to the 80/20 on both in the front and rear bars here. See one up here, one over here. And then the pedals themselves will move independently of the bars. So again, just a quick view to show you that it's easy to set something up to where you have the most maneuverability and adjustment available to you for setting up the pedals properly to where they're comfortable for you. And comfort's what it's all about when it comes to these kind of heavy-duty pedals when we're racing our cars. And just as a quick heads up, you can see that the brackets that are mounted, I've switched them around so now the brackets actually bevel down or go down instead of coming back up. And the reason is you mount them when they're coming up when the pedals are laid back, because you got plenty of room for this plate to come up and do what you want to as far as angle. But when you have them straight up and down like this, you can run into some problems. So I just reversed them so it was lower, and that's fine because I can still bring it up or down to wherever I want it to be. And don't forget, we also have up and down adjustability in our pads themselves. So it should be no trouble dialing something in that's comfortable here. I just wanted to point that out to you, so if you see it mount it to the rig, you say, hey, that doesn't look like the same way you had it mounted before. And again, as you can see, I've raised the pedals back up into a straight up and down position because of the way I drive in my rig. Alright, so let's go ahead and finally get these things mounted to the rig, and we're going to bring up DI view and see what the resolution on these pedals is. Alright, so now we have DI view open, and we're going to check out the resolution range on these pedals. I have made no adjustments to the pedals as far as their travel, and we are running the two red rubber bumpers on the brake pedal. First we'll take a look at my mouse pointer here, the x-axis, and that's where the throttle is. And if you look, if I push that all the way down, you can see it goes all the way to the side there. Now I have the raw data selected. You have to select that to see that, and that's the red numbers. The black numbers is where I've actually calibrated the pedals already, and you can see it at 100% when it reaches the end, even though you're seeing 99.3% in the actual raw data, which is fine. 4095 is a heck of a lot of resolution, and so is 4067, or 99.3% of that. There's no game or simulator that I know of that can output close to that kind of resolution to the pedals anyway, but it is nice to know that it's there if you need it. Now the brake pedal, I have calibrated with a really heavy brake pedal. I really have to push hard on it to get all of the resolution out of it. It starts at 415, 416. It jumps around a little bit at 10% already. And this is common for pedal setups, that they won't be at 0 like the throttle is sitting over here at 0. Even in the raw data, it sits at 0. Because of the way the brake pedals are set up, they have a little pre-movement in them when you first put your foot on there. That's just the way they get calibrated at whoever sets the pedals up. So you'll never see one coming in at raw data at 0. At least I haven't in the pedal sets that I've tested. So I can actually push this down, and you'll watch the black calibrate to 100%, and I'm at 3795 on the raw data, which again is not 4095, but it's plenty of resolution for any simulator I would be using it. In fact, I'm probably wouldn't use more than 75%, 80% of what I got dialed in here right now, and I might actually change the calibration on that once I get into whichever game that I'm running at the time. Now down here at the Z-axis is our clutch, and you can see it starts at 79, or almost 2% down in the raw data, which again is not abnormal for clutches on some pedal sets. And if I push this down, you can see I've already calibrated. It goes all the way down. It's 100%, even though my resolution is just under 4095 at 4086, and almost 100%. It's 99 3/4%, almost 100% there to get the full resolution. But again, this is just numbers that give us an idea of the adjustability and how much resolution rather I can get out of the pedal set. And you can see I've already calibrated, so every time I'm maxing it out, it's 100%. And that's what matters to a game when it uses DIView settings in the registry on my computer for pedal settings. And certain games do that. iRacing does not do that. You calibrate in iRacing, and we're going to do that next. But I want to go ahead and calibrate everything in the registry because I like to run some other games, like I said, of course, R Factor 2, and see how the pedals react in that. And we'll get to those. But first we're going to do iRacing, so when we come back in the next segment, we'll be in iRacing and we'll be setting up the pedals there and see how they look. So here we are at the iRacing options menu, and you'll see my brakes are set up for 0.0 on the force factor. This is what is recommended by Mark. And I also see that most people in the forums have decided that this was the best setting also. I did go ahead and play with it a little bit just because, and they are right, because when you add more curve to the brakes in the force factor, they lock up the brakes too quickly. So leave it at 0 if you get these brake pedals, and I'm sure you'll be happy. Just want to show you that real quick. So now that we've seen that, let's move on to actual driving the pedals. First we'll drive the Corvette in a left foot braking configuration. I'll show you how the pedals are working as I use them. And then we'll go over to the Spec Racer Ford and do some heel and toe shifting with a different setup on the pedals. So it makes it easier to do the heel and toe shifting. So let's go ahead and get to that segment now. Alright, so we're in the Corvette. We're at Virginia International Raceway. And you can see the pedals are superimposed at the bottom. And we'll go ahead and push the clutch in through the pressure plate like you saw there. It's really nice when you release that clutch, you can just feel the pressure plate springs pushing back against you when you release it and start your race or pull off from the pits. Overall, I really like the feel of these pedals. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way. Of course, there are some niggly bits that I would prefer were a little different, but this is down to personal preference. And as a lot of you know, I've tested and used a lot of the high-end pedal sets now, and once you get something that you really like, it's hard for something else to replace it, and that's probably the case here. This brake pedal on this brake set works fine. It's very dependable, it's very accurate as far as your threshold braking and trail braking into a turn or a corner. Very accurate. As you can see here, not having any problems controlling the Corvette. Now the travel on the throttle that you see here is actually a little bit shorter than I liked it, and I actually backed that stop out on the throttle all the way out to where it was almost all the way out anyway, and give me a little bit more travel, and then recalibrated in iRacing and the other sims that I actually drove these in. And it felt much better with more travel for me. Some people like shorter travel. I like just to have a little bit longer travel. And everybody's going to be different on that. But these pedals are just, they're comfortable. They fit right. I have any problems being uncomfortable with these. The repeatability of the brake pedal is very, very good. I'm using the black bumper in the back, as you might be able to see here in the video, and the red one in the front to give me more of a progressive feel. Even so, the overall feel of this brake pedal, to me, for my personal taste, was a little bit, it's hard to describe, maybe a little bit dead feeling as far as the tactile feedback I'm getting to my foot from the pedal itself. And again, this is something that you would never even know about unless you had used a lot of different type of pedals. And it's just, it seems like the Ultimates, which are my main pedals, the Huizenfeld Engineering Ultimates, have more of a tactile feel as when I'm pressing and releasing pedals. So I think it's because of the build of these pedals is so solid, and the pedal levers and everything is so thick and bulletproof that it somehow dampens some of the tactile feedback you get from a pedal because they're so heavy. And not that that's a bad thing. It's just, you know, again, this is a personal preference kind of thing when it comes down to this stuff. And you could use this pedal all day long and for years without even, you know, thinking about it, and doing fine and winning races with it. But just for me, I thought I'd point that out. Now, there are some prototype or beta custom tuning kits, I guess is what we're going to call them, that Mark told me about, and he actually popped a couple of them in the box when he sent these pedals. And I used those tuning kits with this brake pedal. And when I was using the tuning kit with a really soft bumper and a hard bumper, it seemed to give me a little more of that feel that I was looking for. And just the fact that Mark is trying these tuning kits so that different people, of course, are going to have different taste in what they want to feel, can use these tuning kits to get something other than what comes out of the box with just the red and the black bumpers. Alright, so that's enough driving with the left foot brake. We're going to go ahead and move on to the heel and toe, which is a lot more involved when you're doing heel and toe shifting. And we're going to be in the Spec Racer Ford for that, which is not the easiest car to shift. And it's easy to miss a shift for some reason on this car. You really have to take your time with the shifts and be precise with the clutch. So let's go ahead and get to that next. Okay, we're back at Virginia International Raceway, and you can see the pedals are superimposed again, and we're going to try the pedals out a little bit here just to make sure they're spaced where I need them to be, to reach over and hit that throttle with my heel like that, and then push the pedal the clutch pedal in at the same time, and then try to get a little timing down to where we're doing it at the same time. And the Spec Racer Ford in general is a tough car to drive. It's, as far as the shifting, it's easy to miss a shift on this car for some reason, and this is one of the reasons I chose it for this pedal set, so I could see how accurate I could be. You really have to be accurate with your clutch on the timing of this. Too quick of a clutch engagement, you'll miss a shift. Too late, you'll miss a shift. It's a very finicky transmission on this thing. Now, if you've never tried heel and toe shifting, I highly recommend at least you give it a try. It's a lot of fun once you get your timing down. It's just a matter of rhythm, as you can see. Once you get your rhythm down, it's really not that hard at all. It's a lot of fun, very immersive in the cars that we drive that require a heel and toe movement if you want to be driving it like a real race car driver would have to drive it. And those cars are not just Knives Racing, they're in Assetto Corsa and R-Factor 1 and 2 also. Alright, so the clutch pedal, let's see, we talked about the brake, and I have the throttle pedal again. I ended up taking the screw or the bolt and backing it out as far as I could with it still being in there and being able to lock it up with the locking nut. And that gave me the travel that I wanted. Out of the box, it just didn't have enough travel for me, where I could modulate the throttle the way I like to. The clutch pedal is a very cool pedal. It's a great feeling as far as pushing through the pressure plate. And the only complaint I would have about it, and it's really just a personal preference thing. It's not really a complaint. That it's a little bit too soft for me. I'd like to see bigger springs on the clutch and maybe a different cam profile on that big chunk of aluminum that acts as the cam against the two roller bearings, the steel bearings that the arms pivot on. And that would give you a little bit longer push through the springs before it gets easy again, where you've pushed and bottomed out the springs in the pressure plate. But these are something that could easily be fixed or played with a tuning kit perhaps in the future, just like the tuning kits for the brake, a tuning kit for the clutch. Sounds like a great idea to me. What do you think? Anyways, you can see it's easy to drive heel and toe here. I'm not having any problems. I'm very comfortable. I really like this pedal set. Again, the only overall niggly thing I could find about the pedals is, again, they're so dense and so strong and thick that it just felt a little heavy-ish to me as far as the tactile feel on the pedal itself, and didn't feel as lively, I guess is the word I'm trying to reach here or use here, as I just didn't get the tactile feedback that I do off, like, say, the HE Ultimate pedals that are my main pedals that I use. But again, that's a personal preference thing. You could drive these pedals, like I said before, forever and never even worry about that and be very fast and win races. It's just a personal preference thing for me. Alright, so we'll do some more downshifting here on the first turn, and we'll go ahead and end it here and get to the final thoughts about these beautiful, well-functioning HPP pedals. Mark Haggert's HPP hydraulic pedals are a top flight product. He uses only the best materials in construction of this pedal set, and the fit and finish quality is right up there with the ARC carbon pedal set I reviewed a few months ago. Just beautiful. These pedals have a heavy-duty build that should last a very long time. As you saw in this review, there's a lot of settings available in these pedals, and I don't think anyone, except the most finicky, would not be able to find a setup that suits them. And Mark has told me that he's working on some tuning kits for his pedals that will add even more adjustability. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find a brake pedal setting that I felt would suit me with the stock bumper setups that are currently available for these pedals. But you guys have to remember, I've used more than a few high-end pedal sets, and once I found a pedal that best suited me, it's going to be hard for another set of pedals to match that feeling. However, I feel it's only fair to mention that I was able to test a couple of Mark's beta tuning kits for the brake pedal and found a setup that was very close to what I have now. The clutch pedal is a very realistic feel as you push through the simulated pressure plate springs, although I felt I needed a bit more resistance and a bit longer breakthrough point when you push through the pressure plate springs. Again, this is something that a simple cam profile change or stiffer springs would be able to accomplish. In a future clutch pedal tuning kit, perhaps? I did have to back out the throttle pedal stop as far as I could to get the pedal through where I wanted it. After that, I was able to modulate the throttle as good as any other throttle pedal in this price range. So let's get to the cons. First, as usual, this is an expensive pedal set, but as a relative con, because all the really good pedal sets are also expensive. Some may not like the idea of a hydraulic pedal system because of the outside chance of a leak developing somewhere in the system. And Mark tells me that because of his master cylinder design, these pedals can be mounted in an inverted position for a GT-type pedal setup, but not originally designed for that type of installation. And you would need a very stout platform to do this because these pedals are heavy. But I do have to add here that Mark is currently working on a set of GT pedals that are designed from the start to be mounted in an inverted configuration. The pedal levers are not laterally adjustable by themselves, but you can compensate by moving the pedal pad sideways to some extent, or mounting the base to some 80-20 profile and moving the whole set left or right, as I did this in the review. Let's talk about the pros. This is a beautiful set of pedals. Anyone would be proud to own them. Their heavy-duty build lends themselves to what I would call as close to a bulletproof pedal set as you can probably get. Again, ranking right up there with the best sets available today. I never had a problem with this evaluation pedal set. Everything just worked. And I did enjoy testing all the different adjustments available here. As any current HPP pedal owner knows, Mark is great to deal with and to talk to, and he will bend over backwards to help you with anything you need. And it doesn't take him 3 days to reply to an email, like I've experienced with some other sim hardware vendors in the past. Overall, as you can probably guess by now, if you're in the market for a high-end pedal set around this price point, I would put the HPPs on the short list of my top choices. I'm Barry Rowland. And thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel.